Yo. What's going on, world? Welcome to the Life Malcolm Show. I'm your host, Life Malcolm. And we right here on In Touch News Radio one more again. I think what's this, 3 weeks in a row? Have we made it 3 weeks in a row? We back rolling. And just really happy to be here. I definitely want to thank you for tuning in to the Life Malcolm Show. And as is my custom, I have to give a big shout out to the In Touch News team. We've got a team now. I definitely want to appreciate the In Touch News team for everything that they've done to put this program in play, put this station in play. Definitely at the top of the list, my main man, DJ CEO, AKO, and Mrs. DJ CEO, AKA Tampa Bay Tammy, for just all the hard work, not just for not all the hard work specifically related to this radio station, this radio program, but also to the community through the events they produce and promote. And, of course, the newspaper that's been a staple of the Tampa Bay community for decades now. So, yeah, just really appreciative of being a part of that family, this family. And it's always my honor and my duty to give recognition to them for their hard work. And, as usual, got to shout out my main man behind the board, doing all the stuff. My producer, my mystery man. Some of y'all probably know by now who it is, but I'm gonna keep it a mystery until I have some notion that his cover's been blown. So we're just gonna keep it a mystery. One time for my main man, the mystery man behind the board. So, man. I thought I was going to have a guest this week, but that didn't work out. But that's cool. Perfect timing. Because I'm glad we have the opportunity just to spend some time together and talk shop. And I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking. I'm going to do a lot more reading than talking today. At least that's what I expect. Y'all know that the Life Malcolm Show has, certainly in its beginning stages, been a show where we've read numerous pieces from community leaders, world leaders, revolutionaries, and today is a special day. You happen to know what today is?
Well, if you want it from a historical point of view, Martin Luther King was killed on this day.
That's it. Yeah, that's the thing that's most relevant to me about today.
Ding, 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 ding,
Yeah, you won that. Give that man a prize. And so I bought some King books. I think last time we broke out some of these King books was on his birthday, so that was in January, of course. But I brought 3 books this time. Last time I think I just brought the 1 book. But I brought 3 books, and what I do know is a lot of people know a few things about King and talk about Dr. King and what Dr. King's work. They talk about Dr. King and Dr. King's work as if they know who Dr. King was and what Dr. King's work was about, when the reality oftentimes seems to be they only know snippets of. I don't even know if snippet is a good word. I need to find a better word that's more definitive of the very limited knowledge people have of Dr. King. But they hold him up. Usually it's peace lovers, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with peace. I love peace, but there's an appropriate time for peace. You can't have just peace on the plantation, peace in the colony. You have to have principled peace, and people oftentimes who just want to keep peace on the plantation and peace in the colonial structure will say, well, Dr. Luther King says do it nonviolent and this kind of stuff, and they'll pull out this the integrationist elements that you might find in some of Dr. King's speeches, and it robs the people who listen to those people for some idea of how society functions and should function, of some real just take Dr. King and, for lack of a better term, whitewash his words, make him some kind of dedicated pacifist, and completely ignore and liquidate all of the things he said about the prerequisites to peace, if you will, the foundations necessary to bring about the kind of peace that the world needs, the principal peace I just mentioned, where nobody's taking from anybody, nobody's exploiting anybody, because that's what he said. That's what we talked about. Even in his most popular and most widely repeated speeches and writings, he talked about an equality, a justice. He called himself a drum major for justice, and there ain't nothing just about, and that's Just, nothing just about exploitation, nothing just about colonization, nothing just about one people taking advantage of another people for the people who taking advantage for their own good. There's nothing just about that. There's nothing equal when one group of people have the power and another group of people are subject to that power. There's nothing equal about that. So when you just can't. It's dishonest, disingenuous, and tricky to just take the part about peace and liquidate the part about honesty and all the stuff he says about not honesty, but justice and equality is wrong. Just it's dishonest to take that stuff, the peace stuff, and ignore the justice, equality stuff. When we talk about Dr. King. So I figure we'll let him talk in his own words, words that they said he said and put in a book. And some of the books, his wife wrote the foreword for, and at least a couple of them. A couple of them. I have here his wife, Coretta Scott King, wrote the foreword for. So I say that to say perhaps that lends some credence, some validity to the fact that these were his words. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind she was dedicated to the man, committed to the man. One of the things that I always found fascinating about Coretta Scott King is that she never even changed the way she looked after they assassinated him on April 4th, 1968. She had the same hairstyle, same makeup, she looked at it was like she made herself a living time capsule, and some kind. I never, of course, spoke to her to understand the reason why, but I know it's something about that time. That man, that era, that life she lived that made her stay in that role, and she never took on another husband. And there was some kind of commitment there, and perhaps one could infer that commitment is also manifest in her agreement to offer her words in combination to his words and these works. So I would say, there's some books out there we got to wonder, well, who said it? Did they really say it? Is it really true? But I think that the fact that Coretta Scott King came on in and put her words, put her stamp, her name on the work can give us some confidence that there's validity to what we'll read. So most of the people I know talk about Dr. King. I know we're rolling up on a break, so I'm gonna introduce these books shortly. But right before we go to break, I'll do that. I just want to say most of the people I know, we talk about Dr. King. What's the one thing most people know about Dr. King?
I have a dream.
That's
speech.
it. And they don't know most of that. They really, most people really know the part when he starts the refrain, you know, when he starts to talk about I have a dream, and he talks about the dream, but there's minutes of words before he gets to that part where he says, so even though I say to you today, my friends, I still have a dream, right? You know, there's a lot of intro to the I have a dream piece that a lot of people have no idea, but they just talk about the white people and black people, little black boys and black girls holding hands together and something like that. And the other thing, what's the other thing? Do you know the other one?
Mountaintop.
Been to the mountaintop. You know when he did that speech?
The day before he died.
Yep, the night before he died, April 3rd, 1968. Yep. I don't want to live a long
Like
life.
anybody, I'd like to live a long life.
Yeah.
Longevity
has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will, and he's allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land.
Glory.
He said, yeah. Y'all seen the place? Oh man, yeah. The promised land. And he said, I might not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. I'm not worried about any man. I'm not fearing anything. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was an incredible speech. Now, there's one more that people know. Do you know that one? There's one more that people know. The more left-leaning and more conscious of us.
No, tell me what that is.
Why I oppose the war in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I would say around
probably what got him killed.
Certainly that, and the fact that he lent his fame and leadership to a workers' movement, because before the work he did was largely caught up in organizations associated with more middle class Africans, black people, organizations like the SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and the NAACP, and what was the other one? CORE, and the more middle class type Africans who had positions and money,
middle class,
right? Exactly. But when he went to
Memphis to the garbage,
when he went to Memphis, Tennessee. The Lorraine Motel, right? When he went there for the sanitation workers, they were leading that particular action, and he lent his political equity to that struggle, and to put him behind the workers movement, not necessarily because he wasn't in front of it. He went there. He went to join that to merge what his audience with the worker struggle was, certainly the kind of threat that the government, the FBI said that they wanted to avoid. So we're gonna talk about why we can't wait. I'm gonna read a little bit from that. We're gonna read a little bit from where do we go from here, and we're gonna read mostly from the Trumpet of Conscience. So after this, most of the stuff you'll hear are going to be the words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so we'll be right back. This is the Life Malcolm Show right here on In Touch News Radio. I'm your host, Life Malcolm, and we'll see you on the other side of the break.
Birdsong, and I want to recommend highly that if you're an attorney, that you get a quote for errors and omissions insurance from Sam Cohen at Attorneys First. He's had over 20 years of experience, and he knows how to work with attorneys. Call him at 727-799-4321.
Who doesn't love being number one? When your team's dominating the standings, or your favorite band rocks the charts at number one, it feels good, right? Kind of like how it feels when you have auto insurance with State Farm. Because making you feel like number one is an honor your local State Farm agent takes seriously. Through the good times and not so good, your State Farm agent's proud to be here to help life go right.
Call Herman White at 961-6661. That's 961-6661. By now, we're all aware of the dangers of COVID-19. Like others with existing health issues, cancer patients are at a high risk due to their compromised condition. If you are newly diagnosed with cancer, your care likely can't wait. Moffitt Cancer Center is the best place for your cancer concerns and to provide guidance to help you plan your next steps. We're here for you. Call 1-888-456-2839 or go to moffitt.org/here-for-you.
Yo, yo, yo. Welcome back, world. All right. It's the Life Malcolm Show right here on In Touch News Radio. And today is a day where we going to show some love to you through the words of our beloved Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. All right. You've been pretty good so far, Mystery Man, on some of your Dr. King quiz questions. Now, let me ask you this. What do you know what Martin Luther King Jr.'s name was when he was born?
No, sir.
All right, see? And that's why, and I grab people because they want to come talk about Martin Luther King with this, that, was it. But so Martin Luther King Jr.'s name was Michael until he was about like 10, 11, maybe 13, something like that. Yeah, Michael King. But his father was so captivated. Martin Luther King Sr., Michael King Sr., who became Martin Luther King Sr., Michael King Sr. was so captivated by the work of Martin Luther that he changed his name to Martin Luther and, of course, changed his son's name to Martin Luther.
You want to tell the people who Martin Luther is?
Martin Luther was a Protestant who is famous for putting up something like, I don't know what it's like, you got me now. It's like he went and tacked theses. I think it was like 94 theses on the door or something like that. I'm not a real Catholic Protestant type historian, although my Jesuit alum, I think I should know a bit more than I do about Martin Luther. But I remember he was a man who was a Protestant, because there was a lot of controversy with the Catholic Church. People had some controversy with that, and Martin Luther was one of those people with not necessarily with the churches, but with the whole religion, the way things went down. And so Martin Luther, I think it was like 93 theses. We can look at it. Hold on, we can do that in real time. People used to that now. Ain't nobody ashamed of being on their phone doing research no more. So
I'm looking now.
Oh yeah, we can look that up. We can go ahead. Yeah, we look that up. I know. I tell you this. I know more about Martin Luther King Jr. than I know about Martin Luther. But yeah, no, we that's good. That's a good point to go ahead and help people know.
Yeah, keep the people informed.
Yeah. Help people know. That's right on. So Martin Luther was a German priest theologian. Now this is Wikipedia now, so take it for what it's worth. Go do your own research and fact checking. But it's the thing I could come up with right quick. So he was a German priest, theologian, author, hymn writer, professor, and Augustinian friar. He is the seminal figure of the Protestant Reformation, whose followers became known as Lutherans. You heard of the Lutheran Church?
Yeah.
So he, right on. So 95 theses. So that's what it was. So I'm gonna just read a little background on, like, the little intro Wikipedia, so people have an idea. So right quick, Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther, was ordained to the priesthood in 1507. He came to reject several teachings and practices of the Roman Catholic Church. In particular, he disputed the view on indulgences. Luther proposed an academic discussion of the practice and efficacy of indulgences in his 95 Theses of 1517. His refusal to renounce all of his writings at the demand of Pope Leo X in 1520 and the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V at the Diet of Worms in 1521 resulted in his excommunication by the Pope and condemnation as an outlaw by the Holy Roman Emperor. Luther died in 1546 with Pope Leo X's excommunication still in effect. Luther taught that salvation and consequently eternal life are not earned by good deeds, rather they are received only as the free gift of God's grace through the believer's faith in Jesus Christ as Redeemer from sin. His theology challenged the authority and office of the Pope by teaching that the Bible is the only source of divinely revealed knowledge and opposed sacerdotalism by, you don't ask me what that is now, okay, all right, sacerdotalism by considering all baptized Christians to be a holy priesthood. Maybe that sacerdotism is like only certain people can be sacred. Sacerdotalism, literally priest, one who presents sacred offerings. So you know how the priest gives the sacrament and all that. So like only the priest can do that in the Catholic Church, right? So he rejected that. I said everybody can get down. Like you know how in the Baptist Church, you know, it's not just the preacher, the deacons pass it out. You know, so those who identify with these and all of Luther's wide teachings are called Lutherans. Though Luther insisted on Christian or evangelical, oh, they put something in parentheses, in German, evangelisch, as the only acceptable names for individuals who profess Christ. His translation of the Bible into German vernacular made it more accessible to the laity, an event that had tremendous impact on both the church and German culture. It fostered the development of a standard version of the German language, added several principles to the art of translation, and influenced the writing of an English translation, the Tyndale Bible. His hymns influenced the development of singing in Protestant churches. His marriage to Katharina von Bora, a former nun, set a model for the practice of clerical marriage, allowing Protestant clergy to marry. So before him, if you was a preacher, you couldn't get married. You know, yeah. So Protestant, if you was the priest, the clergy, you know, priest still follow that. So he allowed them to get away with that.
So I wonder how Michael King felt when his name was changed to Martin Luther.
Well, you know, that's a great question. Because
at 13.
But what I'm saying, but you know, Michael King was he wasn't an ordinary 13-year-old. You know, he was almost at Morehouse by the time he was 13.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like
right.
Yeah, he wasn't just no average dude.
Right.
So he was educated. You know, so his father was a preacher, right?
Yeah.
So he was, you know, he probably, I would imagine he felt good about. He didn't change it back. You know. So
right.
I would imagine he took that on with a modicum of honor, you know, and felt strong in that.
He was preaching at that age, was he not?
I'm not sure. Let's read up on that right quick.
Okay.
For those who might not know about Martin Luther King, he was born Michael King Jr. in 1929, January 15th, 1929. They call him an American, but we know he was African. He was an African Baptist minister and activist who was one of the most prominent leaders in the civil rights movement from 1955 until his assassination in 1968. We know why. You know what made it jump off in 1955, right?
No, the school thing. No, what was it?
No, that's the same
year.
year.
The busing.
But what jumped that off?
What's her name?
You might be thinking about Rosa Parks. But what jumped that off though?
I don't know.
Emmett Till. They saw that, and so you know Africans felt some kind of way about that. That's the same, right. So just you know, since we're doing this little history piece, I like that. We go ahead and do it. But a black church leader and a son of early civil rights activist and minister Martin Luther King Sr. King advanced civil rights for people of color in the United States through nonviolence and civil disobedience, inspired by his Christian beliefs and the nonviolent activism of Mahatma Gandhi, who wasn't really that nonviolent. He led targeted nonviolent resistance against Jim Crow laws and other forms of discrimination in the United States. We ought to talk about that Gandhi thing too. We come through and dispel that. We come through and dispel that. But let's go to the early life and education. This is good. I'm telling you, King was different. Born in 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, the second of three children to Michael King and Alberta King. King had an older sister. I'm trying to get to King. I'm trying to get the way they talk more about him, King Sr. All right. Shortly after marrying King Sr., shortly after marrying, Alberta King Sr. became assistant pastor of the Ebenezer Church, which still stands in Atlanta today. Senior Pastor Williams died in the spring of 1931. In that fall, King Sr. took the role where he would in time raise the attendance from 600 to several thousand. And so it's Martin Luther King. So this is 1931. So King now is he's two.
So that's a mega church in today's church.
Yeah. He's 2 years old seeing this.
Okay. His daddy brought the church.
Right, right.
Okay.
But he's 2 years old.
And he's seeing that.
Right. Seeing this in 1934, the church sent King Senior on a multinational trip, including to Berlin for the meeting of the Congress, because Martin Luther was German, right?
He was German,
right? So he goes to Berlin for the meeting of the Congress of the Baptist World Alliance. He also visited sites in Germany associated with the Reformation leader Martin Luther. While there, King Senior and the BWA witnessed the rise of Nazism.
What's BWA?
That's the Baptist World Alliance.
Okay.
Yeah. This Congress deplores and condemns as a violation of the law of God, the Heavenly Father, all racial animosity and every form of oppression or unfair discrimination toward Jews, toward colored people, or toward subject races in any part of the world. On returning home in August 1934, so now King would be 5, right? King Senior changed his name to Martin Luther King. I thought King was a little older, but I'm wrong. And changed his 5-year-old son's name to Martin Luther King Jr.
Okay.
So he was 5.
Okay, I see we learned something. He was 5.
Yeah, he was 5. I knew it was I said 15 or something like 30, 50. But anyway, he was 5.
That's still kind of old. You kind of got your identity at 5.
To a guy who was like, let me see when he went to college. When did King go to college? So in September 1940, at age 11, King was enrolled at Atlanta University Laboratory School for the 7th grade, right? And then he sneaked away, studying home to watch parade. So King was in his adolescent years, he initially felt resentment against whites due to racial humiliation that he and his family and his neighbors often had to endure in the segregated South. Okay, all right. So, all right, promise. Next word is going to be Dr. King's words when we get, because I do want to get to those. So, look, we got to take a break. I'm going to say something about, I'm going to know when we get back from break when he enrolled in college, and then we'll get rolling with some of Dr. King's words. We're going to talk about Dr. King, why we can't wait, where we go from here, and the trumpet of conscience right when we get back from break, right here on the Life Malcolm Show.
Bay, let's turn up. Are you ready to party with a purpose? Join us for the all-white affair. Hey there, this is Anjali, Queen Bee from 95.7 The Beat.
And TV host Marlo. Join us at American Social on Sunday, April 23rd at 5 p.m. Tickets available now on Eventbrite by searching White Party by the Water.
They're going fast, so don't wait. Proceeds benefit the best program. Tell your friends, get your sexiest white outfit on, and we'll see you there.
Corey's Classic Auto Center presents Classic First Fridays, hosted by international influencer Love Dorsey on April 7th, only at Burns Bar and Grill, 1704 North Howard Avenue in Tampa. Free entry all night. Kicking off at 8. Ladies, free drinks till 9. $8 Long Island iced teas, 2-for-1 margaritas, 2-for-1 sex on the beaches, $3 fireballs, and $5 green teas. It's the inaugural Classic First Friday at Burns Bar and Grill, brought to you by Corey's Classic Auto Center. Drink specials all night. Kitchen will be open. Happy hour starts at 4. Classic First Fridays, only at Burns, hosted by international influencer Love Dorsey. We'll see you there.
By now, we're all aware of the dangers of COVID-19. Like others with existing health issues, cancer patients are at a high risk due to their compromised condition. If you are newly diagnosed with cancer, your care likely can't wait. Moffitt Cancer Center is the best place for your cancer concerns and to provide guidance to help you plan your next steps. We're here for you. Call 1-888-456-2839 or go to moffitt.org/here for you.
Who doesn't love being number one? When your team's dominating the standings or your favorite band rocks the charts at number one, it feels good, right? Kind of like how it feels when you have auto insurance with State Farm. Because making you feel like number one is an honor your local State Farm agent takes seriously. Through the good times and not so good, your State Farm agent's proud to be here to help life go right.
Call Herman White at 961-6661. That's 961-6661.
Hi, Hi, it's Angela Birdsong, and I want to recommend highly that if you're an attorney, that you get a quote for errors and omissions insurance from Sam Cohen at Attorneys First. He's had over 20 years of experience, and he knows how to work with attorneys. Call him at 727-799-4321.
Yo, 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 yo. Welcome back to the Life Malcolm Show. So, at 15, Martin Luther King Jr. enrolled in Morehouse College. That's what happened when he was 15. So, but Martin Luther King Jr. He was well aware of the dividing lines between African people and white people in this country. He made a speech where he stated, "Black America still wears chains. The finest Negro is at the mercy of the meanest white man. Even winners of our highest honors face the class color bar." And after he won the contest, that was a speech he made. And after he won the contest for making that speech, the driver of the bus called him a black son of a bitch, and initially refused. It told him he had to sit at the back of the bus. No, he had to stand up, but King refused, but complied after the teacher told him he'd be breaking the law. And so King, he said about that night, "It would never leave my memory. It was the angriest I have ever been in my life." So King, this is King. King, his father.
And he was 15 at that.
No. This is before Morehouse. He was a junior in high school at this time.
Wow.
So he like 14, because like 14, 15, because he was 15 when he enrolled in Morehouse. But Morehouse started accepting juniors in high school into college. They started admitting juniors in high school into Morehouse College. But so he was somewhere between 14 and 15 at that time. But he was still in high school.
The angriest he's ever been in.
Yeah. He remembered that, and so So here we go. One of the things. So I just want a lot of people want to make him like people try to do Jesus, make him this docile, P and whatever. This dude was a serious kind of force, but he said so. He talks about different types of Negroes. This is Why We Can't Wait. It's a good book. It's the Letters from Birmingham Jail, right? And so some people know this one too. Just some parts. So they have never really read the whole thing. They just how people do is they take excerpts of our stuff. So King says, he talks about different types of Negroes. He says Negroes are human, not superhuman. Like all people, they have differing personalities, diverse financial interests, and varied aspirations. There are Negroes who will never fight for freedom. There are Negroes who will seek profit for themselves alone from the struggle. There are even some Negroes who will cooperate with their oppressors. These facts should distress no one. Every minority and every people has its share of opportunists, profiteers, freeloaders, and escapists. The hammer blows of discrimination, poverty, and segregation must warp and corrupt some. No one can pretend that because a people may be oppressed, every individual member is virtuous and worthy. The real issue is whether in the great mass the dominant characteristics are decency, honor, and courage. So, I like that piece a lot. That's why I marked it out. One reason why I marked it out is because, we have different types of Negroes here today. We have the petty bourgeoisie who will always betray the African working class, and those are the ones who never fight for freedom and never fight for anything but their own personal gain. And even back then, Dr. King recognized that we have different types of Negroes. But so I'm gonna read a little bit from where do we go from here, if I can get to it. Chaos Our Community is a subtitle of that. But I want to read from this book, The Trumpet of Conscience. I want to start on page 19. And the other text I want to read from starts on page 55. As it turns out, 1955. Yeah, it just turns out to be that way. So this particular, and I'm just going to read straight through as much as I can until we have to go to break. This is called Conscious and the Vietnam War. Conscious and the Vietnam War, page 19. I'm making it up, page 19. So he says, it is many months now since I found myself obliged by conscience to end my silence and to take a public stand against my country's war in Vietnam. I'm not saying I agree with everything King said or anything necessarily here. I'm just reading the words. The considerations which led me to that painful decision have not disappeared. Indeed, they have been magnified by the course of events since then. The war itself is intensified. The impact on my country is even more destructive. I cannot speak about the great themes of violence and nonviolence, of social change and hope for the future without reflecting on the tremendous violence of Vietnam. Since the spring of 1967, when I first made public my opposition to my government's policy, many persons have questioned me about the wisdom of my decision. Why you, they have said. Peace and civil rights don't mix. Aren't you hurting the cause of your people? And when I hear such questions, I have been greatly saddened, for they mean that the inquirers have never really known me, my commitment, or my calling. Indeed, that question suggests that they do not know the world in which they live. In explaining my position, I have tried to make it clear that I remain perplexed, as I think everyone must be perplexed by the complexities and ambiguities of Vietnam. I would not wish to underrate the need for a collective solution to this tragic war. I would wish neither to present North Vietnam or the National Liberation Front as paragons of virtue, nor to overlook the role they can play in the successful resolution of the problem. While they both may have justifiable reasons to be suspicious of the good faith of the United States, life and history give eloquent testimony to the fact that conflicts are never resolved without trustful give and take on both sides. Since I am a preacher by calling, I suppose it is not surprising that I had several reasons for bringing Vietnam into the field of my moral vision. There is, at the outset, a very obvious and almost facile connection between the war in Vietnam and the struggle I and others have been waging in America. A few years ago, there was a shining moment in that struggle. It seemed as if there was a real promise of hope for the poor, both black and white, through the poverty program. There were experiments, hopes, new beginnings. Then came the build-up in Vietnam, and I watched the program broken and eviscerated as if it were some idle political plaything of a society gone mad on war, and I knew that America would never invest the necessary funds or energies in rehabilitation of its poor so long as adventures like Vietnam continue to draw men and skills and money like some demoniacal destructive suction tool. And so I was increasingly compelled to see the poor not only as a moral outrage, but also as an enemy. I was increasingly compelled to see the war not only as a moral outrage, but also as an enemy of the poor, and to attack it such. Perhaps a more tragic recognition of reality took place when it became clear to me that the war was doing far more than devastating the hopes of poor at home. It was sending their sons and their brothers and their husbands to fight and to die, and in extraordinarily higher proportions relative to the rest of the population. We were taking the black young men who had been crippled by our society and sending them 8,000 miles away to guarantee liberties in Southeast Asia, which they had not found in Southwest Georgia and East Harlem. And so we have been repeatedly faced with the cruel irony of watching Negro and white boys on TV screens as they kill and die together for a nation that has been unable to seat them together in the same schools. We watched them in brutal solidarity burning the huts of a poor village, but we realized that they would never live on the same block in Detroit. I could not be silent in the face of such cruel manipulation of the poor. King understood, man. He knew what was happening. He realized that this government targeted black people and poor people, and he recognized the difference. It wasn't just let's all get together and hold hands. He saw a problem. My third reason This is King again. My third reason moves to an even deeper level of awareness, but it grows out of my experience in the ghettos of the North over the last 3 years, especially the last 3 summers. As I walked among the desperate, rejected, angry young men, I have told them that Molotov cocktails and rifles would not solve their problems. I have tried to offer them my deepest compassion while maintaining my conviction that social change comes most meaningfully through nonviolent action. But they asked, and rightly so, what about Vietnam? They asked if our own nation wasn't using massive doses of violence to solve its problems to bring about the changes it wanted. Their questions hit home, and I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government. For the sake of those boys, for the sake of this government, for the sake of the hundreds of thousands trembling under our violence, I cannot be silent. For those who ask the question, aren't you a civil rights leader, and thereby mean to exclude me from the movement for peace, I answer by saying that I have worked too long and hard now against segregated public accommodations to end up segregating my moral concern. Justice is indivisible. It must also be said that it would be rather absurd to work passionately and unrelentingly for integrated schools and not be concerned about the survival of a world in which to be integrated. I must say further that something in the very nature of our organizational structure in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference led me to this decision. In 1957, when a group of us formed that organization, we chose as our motto to save the soul of America. Now, it should be incandescently clear that no one who has any concern for the integrity and life of America today can ignore the present war. All right, so let's take a break, and then we go to 55.
We can skip the break.
We skip the break. All right, cool. We skip the break. Thank you, Mr. Man. All right, so and we're not reading all the way from 19 to 55. I want to miss it. I just wanted to start at 19 because I think he just lays a good foundation for his position on this idea of peace and what peace is supposed to mean. So let me roll into. Let's see if there's anything else, because I didn't realize I talked much more than I wanted to. I wanted to read more than I talked, but here we go though. We're gonna read right here. Okay.
What page?
This is page 27, but yeah, we just kind of picking up on the peace theme. What do peasants think as we ally ourselves with the landlords and as we refuse to put action into our many words concerning land reform? Where are the roots of the independent Vietnam we claim to be building? Is it among these voiceless ones? We have destroyed their two most cherished institutions, the family and the village. We have destroyed their land and their crops. We have cooperated in crushing one of the nation's only non-communist revolutionary political forces, the United Buddhist Church. We have supported the enemies of the peasants of Saigon. We have corrupted their women and children and killed their men. What liberate us? Now there's little left to build on save bitterness, and soon the only solid physical foundations remaining will be found at our military bases and in the concrete of the concentration camps we call fortified hamlets. The peasants may well wonder if we plan to build our new Vietnam on such grounds as these. Could we blame them for such thoughts? We must speak for them and raise the questions they cannot raise. These two are our brothers. Perhaps the more difficult but no less necessary task is to speak to those who have been designated as our enemies. What of the National Liberation Front? How can they believe in our integrity when now we speak of aggression from the North as if there were nothing more essential to the war? How can they trust us when now we charge them with violence after the murderous reign of Diem, and charge them with violence when we pour every new weapon of death into their land? Surely we must understand their feelings even if we do not condone their actions. How do they judge us when our officials know that their membership is less than 25% communist and yet insist on giving them the blanket name? They ask how we can speak of free elections when the Saigon press is censored and controlled by the military junta. Their questions are frighteningly relevant. Is our nation planning to build on political myth again and then shore it up with power of new violence? Here's the true meaning and value of compassion and nonviolence. When they help us to see the enemy's point of view, to hear his questions, to know his assessment of ourselves. For from his view, we may indeed see the basic weaknesses of our own condition. And if we are mature, we may learn and grow and profit from the wisdom of the brothers who are called the opposition. All right, so that's I thought that was a good piece. I think he was saying something that Ho Chi Minh said. Okay, this is going to be page 55. I just like the way they started.
Ho Chi Minh.
Ho Chi Minh was the fierce leader of the Vietnamese. Revolution. So this chapter, this is on page 55. Well, actually it's 53, but the text starts in 55. So nonviolence and social change. He says there's nothing wrong with a traffic law which says you have to stop for a red light. But when a fire is raging, the fire truck goes right through that red light and normal traffic had better get out of its way. Or when a man is bleeding to death, the ambulance goes through those red lights at top speed. There is a fire raging now for the Negroes and the poor of this society. They are living in tragic conditions because of the terrible economic injustices that keep them locked in an underclass, as the sociologists are now calling it. Disinherited people all over the world are bleeding to death from deep social and economic wounds. They need brigades of ambulance drivers who will have to ignore the red lights of the present system until the emergency is solved. So you got to break the law. you got to break the law.
That applies today.
You got to run the red light. Massive civil disobedience is a strategy for social change, which is at least as forceful as an ambulance with its siren on full. In the past 10 years, nonviolent civil disobedience has made a great deal of history, especially in the southern United States. When we and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference went to Birmingham, Alabama in 1963, we had decided to take action on the matter of integrated public accommodations. We went knowing that the Civil Rights Commission had written powerful documents calling for change, calling for the very rights we were demanding, but nobody did anything about the commission's report. Nothing was done until we acted on these very issues and demonstrated before the court of world opinion the urgent need for change. It was the same story with voting rights. The Civil Rights Commission 3 years before we went to Selma had recommended the changes we started marching for, but nothing was done until in 1965 we created a crisis the nation could not ignore. Without violence, we totally disrupted the system, the lifestyle of Birmingham and then of Selma with their unjust and unconstitutional laws. Our Birmingham struggle came to its dramatic climax when some 3,500 demonstrators virtually filled every jail in that city and surrounding communities, and some 4,000 more continued to march and demonstrate nonviolently. The city knew then in terms that were crystal clear that Birmingham could no longer continue to function until the demands of the Negro community were met. Were you around during those times?
I was.
Well,
I mean,
what do you remember about them?
I couldn't go. I was.
But what do you remember about the times? Even if you couldn't go, did you hear was there something swirling in the?
I came from what we call a middle class family.
Okay.
My daddy was an elementary school principal.
Okay.
And family of 6 boys and 1 girl, and my mama wasn't going to allow her boys to get caught up in that mess.
Okay.
That's how I grew up.
Makes sense.
But my daddy made sure we were aware of all the things that were affecting Black Americans during that time.
Yeah.
He was from an intellectual point of view. He was not. He supported the sanitation workers, but he wasn't going to allow us to march with the sanitation workers.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So King says, in our society, it is murder, psychologically, to deprive a man of a job or an income. You are in substance saying to that man that he has no right to exist. You are in a real way depriving him of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, denying, in his case, the very creed of this society. Now, millions of people are being strangled that way. The problem is international in scope, and it is getting worse as the gap between the poor and the affluent society increases. The question that now divides the people who want radically to change their situation is, can a program of nonviolence, even if it envisions massive civil disobedience, realistically expect to deal with such an enormous entrenched evil? First of all, would nonviolence work psychologically after the summer of 1967? Many people feel that nonviolence as a strategy for social change was cremated in the flames of the urban riots of the last 2 years. They tell us that Negroes have only now begun to find their true manhood in violence, that the riots prove not only that Negroes hate whites, but that compulsively they must destroy them. Frantz Fanon said something like that. That, you know, he said, how do you get rid of colonialism? Kill the colonizer. Because if you don't have the colonizer, then you don't have the colonized. That's how you get rid of colonialism. Yeah, you want to get rid of racism, kill the racist. I mean, that's what Frantz Fanon would say. I think that was in Richard of the Earth. Frantz Fanon said that. Frantz Fanon was from Algiers, a psychologist, man, brilliant revolutionary theorist. This bloodlust interpretation ignores one of the most striking features of the city riots. Violent they certainly were, but the violence, to a startling degree, was focused against property rather than against people. See, so I think sounded like King saying we back then we did violence wrong. There were very few. He said we did it against property, against people. You see, we, you know, as you mentioned earlier, the same stuff that King mentioned that confronted us in the 1960s still confront us now. So apparently the violence that we did then didn't work. We need a different kind of violence. Because you just this hard, you know, violence against hard targets. Apparently, hard targets being, you know, concrete, brick, mortar, wood. You know, those we need maybe violence against soft targets. He says the cases of injury to persons and the vast majority of the rioters were not involved at all in attacking people. The much publicized death toll that marked the riots and the many injuries were overwhelmingly inflicted on the rioters by the military. Yeah, so all the violence that came, much like now, you know, when Africans respond to something like George Floyd or Breonna Taylor or something, you know, Mike Brown, you know, we run up in buildings, you know, they call it looting or what have you. But when somebody's getting hurt, it's us based on the attack of the military, whether it's the domestic military, domestic military called the police or the Army or the National Guard or something like that. It is clear that the rioters were exacerbated by police action that was designed to injure or even kill people. That's applicable to today. As for the snipers, no account of the riots claims that more than 1 or 2 dozen people were involved in sniping. From the facts, an unmistakable pattern emerges. A handful of Negroes used gunfire substantially to intimidate, not to kill, and all of the other participants had a different target: property. All right. So, the focus on property in 1967 riots was not accidental. It has a message. It is saying something. If hostility to whites were ever going to dominate a Negro's attitude and reach murderous proportions, surely it would be during a riot. But this rare opportunity for bloodletting was sublimated into arson or turned into a kind of stormy carnival of free merchandise distribution. Africans want to try to get stuff. Why did the rioters avoid personal attacks? The explanation cannot be fear of retribution, because the physical risks incurred in the attacks on property were no less than for personal assaults. The military forces were treating acts of petty larceny as equal to murder. That's even back then.
Wow.
Yeah. Far more rioters took chances with their own lives in their attacks on property than threatened the life of anyone else. Why were they so violent with property then? Because property represents the white power structure which they were attacking and trying to destroy. A curious proof of the symbolic aspect of the looting for some who took part in it is the fact that after the riots, police received hundreds of calls from Negroes trying to return merchandise that they had taken. Those people wanted the experience of taking and redressing the power imbalance that property represents. Possession afterward was secondary. A deeper level of hostility came out in the arson.
Wow.
Yeah. All right.
We're going to get to that one.
Yeah. So I think just pick one of my
Let's squeeze something in.
pick one of my favorite joints. This is, of course, Where Do We Go From Here? And King says, the South was a stronghold of racism. In the white migrations through history from the South to the North and West, racism was carried to poison the rest of the nation. Prejudice, discrimination, and bigotry had been intricately embedded in all institutions of Southern life, political, social, and economic. There could be no possibility of life-transforming change anywhere so long as the vast and solid influence of Southern segregation remained unchallenged and unhurt. The 10-year assault at the roots was fundamental to undermining the system. What distinguished this period from all preceding decades was that it constituted the first frontal attack on racism at its heart. Since before the Civil War, the alliance of Southern racism and Northern reaction has been the major roadblock to all social advancement. The cohesive political structure of the South working through this alliance enabled a minority of the population to imprint its ideology on the nation's laws. This explains why the United States is still far behind European nations in all forms of social legislation. England, France, Germany, Sweden, all distinctively less wealthy than us, provide more security relative for their people. That's I think that's, I don't think that was the best selection, because we need more context for that. Let me see which one is it. Okay, just snippets. Whites, it must frankly be said, are not put in a similar mass effort to re-educate themselves out of their racial ignorance. It is an aspect of their sense of superiority that white people of America believe they have so little to learn. And I end on that with a little anecdote. Last night, I watched Jeopardy. Anybody who knows me knows that I like, almost everything stops for me for Jeopardy if I can catch it right. And there was this white man, double Jeopardy question. I forget exactly what it was. This is in the second round of Jeopardy. This is in the double Jeopardy round, and they had the daily double in the double Jeopardy round, worth $2,000. However much you want to bet, at least $2,000. And the question was something. Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey came from this place, and this white man said New Zealand. Yeah.
New Zealand.
Marcus Garvey, the father of African internationalism, the creator of the red, black, and green flag, the one who said the Black Jesus, Africa for Africans here, and those at home and those abroad. Who had the largest African organization in the world ever. Millions of people who had millions of people, at least 1 million people at Madison Square Garden. I think so, something like 1 million people or something. Maybe not 1 million, that's a lot of people. But a lot of people came to Madison Square Garden to see this cat.
They filled it up.
Madison Square Garden. This in the early 1900s, something like that, late 1800s, when he had that conference at Madison. He said, New Zealand.
Did you throw something at the TV?
No, I learned because I saw something like that before. I think I might have mentioned it, where they had Ken Jennings, Brad Rutter, and this dude, I can't remember. So they had, put it like this, they had the guy who won the most games on Jeopardy, Ken Jennings. Okay. Brad Rutter, who'd won the most tournaments.
Okay.
I think Brad Rutter might have won the most money. And then they had the guy Roger, I think his name was Roger Craig. I know he had a name like a football player, who'd won like the most tournaments. So these like the three top dudes competing against each other, right? Right. And so the question was, the Negro National Anthem says, lift every voice and blank. And all three of them rang in, and none of them could get it right.
None of them could get it right.
So
oh my God! Well, yeah. I'd like to know what were their answers.
Oh, I don't remember. I recorded it though. We could do it after the show. But yeah, I marveled at that. So back then I had what they called the DVR. So I played it back and recorded it because that moment informed me. Just made it plain that white people don't have to know nothing about Africans.
They don't.
Nothing. We got to know everything about them.
Exactly. So it goes back to DeSantis trying to take Black history out of.
Oh, don't get me started on that. No, that's another. That's
a whole nother topic.
That's something I want to talk about too, because you remember Constantine. You know who Constantine is?
Yeah.
Constantine, the emperor who in 313 had the, I think was it Nicene Council or something like that, and he decided, essentially the council decided what books would be in the current Bible and what books wouldn't. And that's what DeSantis doing. DeSantis Constantine all over again, deciding what's going to be in history and what's not going to be in history. And so when I talk to people who want to talk to me about the Bible, it's like how just like we talked about King, these people will only tell you the stuff they want you to know, the stuff that works for them, etc. And so Constantine did it in 313, and DeSantis doing it in 2023. Ron Constantine. So it's good to know, good to read. I appreciate y'all listening to me read. I hope some of the passages I read inspire, encourage you to go pick up some more King books and see what else the brother had to say, because the brother said a lot more about his reality than he did about his dreams. And on that note, we're going to say good night. It's always a pleasure kicking it with you, and I look forward to the next time. This has been the Life Malcolm Show right here on In Touch News Radio, where everybody is a star and the biggest star is you.